Philosophers talk to our times, we citizens in dystopia. It is one of the truisms of political power that a state has to manage the desires of its individuals, hopefully very accurately, folding them into envelopes that somehow resonate with what the state is and how it holds on to what it thinks it owns. So in Discipline and Punish, you get two versions of two very different sorts of state. The first, the pre-19th century state, I suppose, although it's a little bit, the division is a little bit earlier. This was the state that was adept at raising regimes of death and destruction, whose politics then was caught up in the politics of the hereafter. States then that were the gatekeepers of the hereafter, that somehow had religion in their pocket, a religion that's also worshipped them, so that your desire for a better world was turned into a way you were rendered docile, viable within the state, that you no longer threatened it and brought it down. And if you did threaten it and brought it down, the state would arrange elaborate executions, political shows to show their power over the power of life and the gate of death. That then changes, Foucault says, as populations need to learn to live, to be living members of a living species. The soul shifts. It becomes not really about the hereafter, but rather becomes a nexus of power relations, through which your very individuality becomes a way in which you wish to discipline your body, to make sure that it has this desires rather than that desires. The criminalization of sexuality, the demand that you have to conform to certain sets and standards, and if you don't, you're weird. The soul then shifts its power access, its very unity becomes a way to create, to render docile citizens, to ensure all their desires are folded one within the other. Such individuality took a lot of vigour, a lot of training. Desire naturally is rather messy. I can desire many things, think in many different ways, and still be that thing I might call myself. Individuality, the necessity to have a single soul, a single desire, is a discipline in its own right. A discipline the state peddled as its right. Hence, the politics of discipline, the politics of the schoolyard, the politics of the prison never far away, of the hospital and of the factory. Endless moments in discipline, in which a unity is enforced from without, twisting desire into a human soul. And now, that rigour clearly collapsed. Desire is on the shift again. We no longer are bound by one set of rules of discipline. I would say rather, we are closer to being an individual soul, to being an individual corporation. What is a corporation but a holding function for a set of assets, desires that are wrapped together in a single wrapping and said, this is the corporation, and loaded with debt and spun off to do stuff. But it is always utterly public. At no point it has a private life. And so it is surely the case with our desires. Our desires, which we feel to be our own, are almost wholly manufactured beyond us. In that industry of advertising, that industry that really got going with Freud's brother-in-law, I think it is his brother-in-law, Bernays, and the idea that what you had to get from Freudianism is a discipline, that our world of repression is somehow wrong. And once, of course, you make that move, desire then becomes free from the necessity to fold into a simple individuation. It becomes something that companies can own, can manufacture. And so desires were endlessly manufactured. Fear of bad breath, of what your neighbours were talking about you. Fear of not being able to do housework correctly, of not knowing how to educate your kids. Fear, then, endlessly opening up new worries and desires that you never wholly owned. You were merely the incorporation, the embodying factor, where they appeared, but the assets were defined elsewhere. You were utterly public. Now, of course, that is crisscrossed with those things that get called memes. You will notice how much I hate the term. That is an easily digested form of thought, ultra-processed thinking version of thinking, where you have a thought done on the computer that encapsulates in one image a single emotion, a single idea, a single moment, that cuts out any further need for concentration, any further need for discipline, that catches you up then in that desire there, which you immediately make public and thereby own. Because that is, of course, another aspect of us in corporate souls. We can't own anything unless we publicise it ourselves. So all your desires shift. They become utterly public concerns, mere sales pitches. And you yourself, a sales pitch amongst so many other sales pitches. Public, open, no longer twisted into anything individual. For all corporations are just holding functions for 1,000 different moves. There is no need to bind them together. All that matters is they somehow form a successful corporation. And for us, we measure that by how we reward our masters, how we are bound up within a world where we can trump our desires and say, well, we got what we wanted and now we want more. But there is no need for unity, no desire for unity, only a shifting multiplicity of different wants. And that is, and of course, AI further complicates the picture. Because AI is, if you like, the full incorporation of the human soul. Humanity slips. You become a little bit of a managing director, a little bit of a middle manager in your own incorporation. You lose the function of CEO. You become merely kind of the person who says, we ought to do this. And AI manages all the rest. At least it does in the wet dreams of its manufacturers. Its entire point is to define the way the soul can be incorporated. And as it can be incorporated within itself, so that you will feel that these desires that actually came from elsewhere are actually yours and yours alone. And then in publicizing them, catch you in a nexus of power relations that actually binds you to other corporations, bigger companies, so that you come enmeshed within endless other public concerns, all utterly, utterly public, utterly open, no hidden inner world, no private world, or if there is a private world, it is only that world that paranoia has given you, that fear has given you. We are trapped by our desires. Of course we are. That goes without saying. But these desires now become less our desires, and we are more a grounding, a place in which desire happens. As a corporation is a place in which business happens, and nothing more. It is not the business itself. It is not the reason for it. That is, of course, why, I think, Foucault said that we were about to enter the Deleuzian age. For Deleuze, as much as Spinoza, is the great philosopher of desire. The person who understands what it means to think of desires as human essence. Not as a single essence, a single soul, but as themselves in their own right. So that to be is to desire, and to be free is to work out ways to set yourself and your desires open to the world beyond you. Open and able to change, and to change who and what you are. And what, of course, makes what Spinoza would call a common notion, and Deleuze would no doubt see as a journey, is the ability to orchestrate different desires, to have them resonate one within the other, in a way that opens out to yet more desire, more possibility, more ways to change the world. There is a reason, you see, why states want to control desire. If they can render it flaccid, ineffective, each desire, if you like, isolated in itself, a single paean of lust, that yes, opens up into other lusts, but all those lusts arranged in some kind of series, then we are controlled. Nothing more needs to be done. No rebellion is possible. No thought beyond the state is conceivable. And it doesn't matter how dystopic it is. We'll always see foreign wars in terms of our own oil lusts. Our desires to go and see our relatives abroad and to fly, and all the rest, and we're all utterly caught. For the way to set one's desires to free, then, is to create a far more spontaneous, incandescent tissue of desire, where one desire has resonance somewhere else in that set of desires you might call your own. Embodies it, opens it up in a different way, and as that one moves, another one moves, so that they all move off together. They all jingle jangle, one within the other. The desire for a free world changes who and what you eat, and who and what you eat changes then how you understand you exist within a community. And how you exist within a community changes how you think, how you think about what you value, and how you change what you value and desire it differently. You think what and who you are differently. Desires that resonate one within the other take you on strange journeys of the soul. Take you on strange journeys of what and who you can be, how you can individuate yourselves. Can set you free. Free, yes, from that necessary incorporation of the soul, and free to look to other states, free to reach people in other ways. That is, of course, why they need to be regulated. It is not the game, then, to give up on desire, to look for an abstract world, but rather to think of ways that ways to want that cannot be controlled, that are your own alone, that allow you to move beyond a simple world, where all your desires are enwrapped in a single corporation, and that corporation is somehow said to be yourself, where your desires are wholly owned public assets that you have for a moment and only know as you try and force them on others. The desires need to become something that you own by making them jangle one within the other, take you and others on strange journeys. And then, you are already halfway to a revolution, if nothing else in what and who you could be, already beyond the dystopia.